Hi, my name is Wayne and I'm keeper of anthropology here at the Horniman Museum. Generally, when you come to a museum, what you see on display are objects drawn from our collections. But in many museums, we show only a very small percent of what we actually hold. Here at the Horniman, the anthropology collections, for example, is approximately 90,000 objects. We have on show less than 5% of that. Today, what we're going to try and do is to introduce you to some objects that are not on display. These objects are from the Moche culture of Peru.
That's correct.
I'm going to be talking to George Lau, a lecturer in the Sainsbury Research Unit. His specialization is on Latin American archaeology, with specific focus, I think, on the Andean region.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Perhaps, George, what we could start out with is for you to tell us a little bit about the Moche.
To answer your question, Wayne, the Moche were one of the greatest civilizations of the Andean world, and basically we're talking about the Central Andes, which is synonymous with Peru today. The culture itself dates to the first centuries AD to about 8700 to 800. And the types of objects that we're going to be discussing today really treat their cosmology and some of their practices concerning warfare. I think very quickly with this particular piece, you can see that the person or the individual being portrayed or represented is of a higher status. We have telltale signs that this is a warrior, a high status one moreover. First of all, we have a person who's wearing a shield, but also a club with what's called a finial, or the top part of a scepter or a mace, that's shaped in the form of an owl head, or a bird head more generally. But we also recognize that this person is high status because he's wearing these elaborate ear ornaments. And we know for the Andes that high status men especially wore ear spools.
What is the relationship between the one you just discussed and this one?
On the first one, we noted how certain aspects or certain items which were either worn or either held in his hands showed some aspect of his identity, if you will, or his role in society.
Yeah.
For this particular object, what's interesting, I think, beyond the ear ornaments, is an arrangement of hair right at the frontal part of the person's head. And for purposes that we'll look at later, is important from the standpoint of warfare as well as sacrifice. Very clearly you see in his left hand a little vessel, probably a representation of a coca lime receptacle. This type of plant is especially important for activities such as work, but we know in the past that coca was also very important for warfare because as a stimulant it gives you that kind of extra energy, and also kind of to enhance your alertness, if you will, for obviously a practice that, let's say, will mean life or death.
I noticed that there is a little thing on the back.
This is a Coca Bag, and you can see that because of the bulge, it's probably packed with coca.
In another one of the pots, I noticed that there is a small thing on the side of his jaw, and I wanted you to tell me about that and if that is related to chewing coca.
Yes.
Yeah? All right.
His right cheek is literally kind of like a squirrel full of coca. What we have here is probably the head of a prisoner, probably taken through warfare practice or through raiding in Moche society.
But what about the vessel specifically tells you that he is a prisoner, for example?
The telltale sign for scholars that this is a person who's associated with warfare is this frontal hairlock, again, that we mentioned a little bit earlier on that particular object. There. This type of hairlock is normally represented with warriors, and specifically warriors who are on the losing end of any combat scene. What's also, I think, really fantastic about this piece is obviously the great naturalism. It's one of the, Moche were of course best known for their artworks, and one of the reasons I think these types of works resonate with you and I today, you and me today, is because we somehow find a familiarity with looking at other people's faces
Right,
and other
yeah,
people's
yeah.
bodies,
Mhm, mhm.
that they're not unlike ours,
Right.
right? And then what's also interesting about this particular piece is that you see here painting on the ceramic vessel itself,
Right.
which may be showing different types of skin ornamentation.
So George, we talked a little bit about warfare. What does this one in particular tell us about warfare? It's an intriguing one for me.
Yeah.
But what can you say more about how it alludes to the warrior?
Well, first of all, I think what we see very clearly here is a person who has his hands tied behind his back, and you can see that very clearly here if I just turn around slowly. Very important for the society, and in terms of their raiding practice especially, or their combat, was to actually take back prisoners live so that they could be somehow shown within the society and eventually sacrificed within some public space. And this vessel essentially shows one of these prisoners sitting, probably waiting for his demise. I think what is interesting about this particular object is that it shows the warrior without clothes, except for certain aspects of his headdress. It's said that in many native societies of North and South America, when you don't have clothing, your power or your identity's been taken away.
We've been reading these vessels for their representation. But what are they?
We focus on their imagery especially because they show us some aspect of ancient life that is difficult for archaeologists or for other scholars to get at. But you're right, these do have other functions as well. There are two. One is that they're actually physical vessels to hold liquids.
Right.
The second function for these objects was as grave offerings. What this probably meant was that liquids were probably put into the tomb as offerings for the afterlife of the person being buried.
What happened to the Moche?
There was some sort of environmental event or a series of events which prompted the collapse of the society. There's another option where the culture disappeared, but the society which produced the culture largely changed their stylistic or cultural preferences, the material cultural preferences. Probably a number of factors were involved overall in the collapse of Moche culture.